prosecutor. She works at FIU. And let me just try this here. Dr. Hamilton, are you hearing us?
I am. Thank you.
All right. So everyone is on board, and Melba is a shiro, says surviving the survivor COE. Um,
Heart you,
bugs.
COE.
Yeah. So, Melba, I know you covered this story. A lot of people don't know about this story. It's absolutely wild. We'll go back in time a little bit, but for now, there was a hearing in Italy this week. I believe it was yesterday, if I'm correct, or Tuesday, and he got up before a judge in Italy, this guy Lee Gilley, and says, "Don't send me back to America," essentially because Texas has the death penalty. This has not become a death penalty case yet, but this guy is fearful of that, and he said, "Don't send me back." And the Italians are against capital punishment, and they've been known to not extradite people under those circumstances. How unusual and bizarre is this case?
So, hey, Joel, Dr. Hamilton, always great to be on with you.
Yeah.
And yeah, this is very unusual because most of the time when we see defendants flee, they flee one state over. Right. So this speaks to somebody who has a tremendous amount of means to be able to get a forged passport, have, basically be able to travel under a different name, get to Italy, have some ability to at least have some place to lay their head. That is not your average defendant. So, you have the money aspect, which clearly reigns heavily over this. But in terms of this as a strategy, it's not a bad one because, as we know, if you flee to a country that will not extradite someone because they're opposed to the death penalty, you can then basically what ends up happening is that the country will be like, listen, hey, state of Texas, state of Mississippi, whatever, we will give you the person back as long as you promise not to implement the death penalty. So death penalty will not be on the table. And then the jurisdiction who wants the person back to be able to try them will agree. So now he's effectively run an inroad and has, if this goes according to how past cases have gone, death penalty won't be on the table. So the max he will face will be life in prison for the murder of his wife. So people can debate which way or the other, whether that's right or wrong, but that is the legal reality of what we're looking at in this particular case.
Yeah, and Melba, if I've got it right, then Texas, to a degree, now has its hands tied legally. They can't sit there, at least not publicly. Can they say, "Oh, we won't try him as a death penalty case, have him sent back," and then could they switch gears?
I mean, they could, but that, of course, burns any bridge, right? So the next person that decides to flee, the country's not going to extradite them back because they're going to be like, listen, we saw what you did last time, you lie. So no, we will keep the person here. And, if there's a pathway to try them in this country, okay, especially if that person is a national of that particular country, okay, fine. And if not, that person's lost to the criminal justice system in the United States forever. So it's not a good idea for you to try and do a bait and switch. Now, the only other avenue could be, listen, we haven't made a determination yet, but please send them back. But again, it still circles back to the same argument. If there's a possibility you're going to execute this person, we cannot in good conscience, send the person back. So.
By the way, Melba only has till 3, which is plenty of time, 45 minutes. And then I'm hoping Dr. Hamilton, who, by the way, if you don't know, Dr. Hamilton is a professor at Surrey in the UK, a law professor, but she's also a former law enforcement officer, a police officer, and a corrections officer. So she's got a ton of knowledge, and I'm hoping she'll stick around just to take your questions at the tail end of this. Once we go through everything, you guys know I share the good, the bad, and the ugly. Well, it's all good, but the Waldman family, one kid went off on her first sleepaway with school. My youngest turned 7 today, my boy. So we're doing a little party action tonight. Grandma Carm is coming over. COE is losing her voice. The oldest bat mitzvah is in a week. It's mayhem. It's pandemonium. And we're trying to stay afloat. Not making excuses, just telling you the reality of our world, which is in our world a Thursday. Tuli Pool is here from the Kingdom of Lesotho, which is why I say we are a global phenomenon. I mean, Dr. Hamilton, you've got amazing credentials. Again, former corrections officer, former police officer, now a law professor. What's your macro sort of perspective on this case? Very interesting legally. It's another alleged horrific murder of a wife, which is far too common. But from a macro perspective, in terms of him getting loose and fleeing to Italy, what do you think of this?
Well, Mr. Gilley did his homework, so I don't like to give him much credit, but he did it there, meaning that so he picked Italy on purpose. So most European countries, as well as some other countries such as Canada, who don't like the death penalty, they will extradite back to the U.S. as long as they get sufficient assurances that the U.S. will take the death penalty off the table. Italy is no longer like that. So specifically, Italy has case law that indicates that even with assurances, they are not going to extradite anyone that the death penalty is at all possible. So they have refused to accept assurances. And that was based on a case called Venezia in like 1986, where in that particular case, it was an Italian citizen, but he was accused of committing a murder in Florida. He then fled to Italy. The U.S. tried to extradite him. Florida was willing to take the death penalty off the table. And there was actually at that time a statute in Italy that said that that was okay. With appropriate assurances, they could extradite. So lower court had ruled in that, but the upper court, constitutional court, overruled that and said, we don't care about the statute. We actually think the statute is unconstitutional under our law. And so we are not going to extradite regardless of the assurances. And so there is case precedent in Italy specifically about that. And the reason it's unique is that under the European Court of Human Rights is the human rights legislation will permit extradition under the European human rights with assurances. And Italy has said, we're not going to follow that. We are going to provide greater assurances by not extraditing under any circumstances if it's a capital offense. So just to give a little bit of background, and that's why I have to give him a little bit of credit for picking Italy, probably on purpose for those reasons.
Yeah.
But let me jump in and ask then, if let's say it gets dropped down to, I don't know, a second degree murder, right? Where death penalty would not apply. And it's just, basically life in prison. Would they extradite knowing so in other words, the Texas prosecutors would have to amend the charge from first degree murder to second degree murder. Death penalty doesn't apply. Would that then be a scenario where Italy would extradite?
There has not been a case on that facts, and that is certainly why you are an acclaimed law professor for even thinking of that. So that is a unique scenario. So it could be that they drop it. I would imagine, though, that Italy would want assurances you are not going to raise it back to capital punishment. And you're right, is technically they could, but for all the reasons that you mentioned, that would politically not be the best thing. But then it is Texas. It is Texas. And I lived in Texas many years, so maybe I have a right to be a little bit critical of them.
Yeah,
that is true.
Melba, by Florida, Texas, same difference. But Melba, a bunch of people commenting on your ring, which is both beautiful and as probably as effective as a taser. That thing is a deadly weapon. I might start rocking a ring like that just because I live, the road rage here in Miami.
Oh my God.
Irish Jackie here. Great to catch you live, Joel. Watch your shows all the time. Totally obsessed. Thank you so much. But the only time I can catch you live is Friday. Carm is here tomorrow. We're going to look at Corey Richins again. Carm has a friend in town, and every time she has a friend in town, she calls me to tell me how exhausted she is. So I was sure she was going to try to get out of tomorrow. But right now, she is scheduled to be here. Carm parties like more than anybody. Melba, she calls me the other day. She's like, we took a free taxi from I don't know, 5th and Ocean. I didn't know there's a taxi across. I had no idea.
Yeah, new water taxi. I think it goes between like whatever Maurice Gibbs Park over there, and then docks around, basically close to not too far from Bayside, like kind of in that area.
Yeah, she went shopping at Bayside Park. That's what Carm does while I'm working, everybody. But she will be here tomorrow. Let's watch a story on this. There's a lot to get to with this case. I've got 2 local news stories. Here's one of them.
Currently in custody in Italy. Questions about his extradition remain. Tonight, a Harris County judge has now issued a gag order, meaning any attorney involved cannot speak about the case outside of the courtroom. Let's get right to ABC 13's Mo Hyder, live in Houston, with more on why the judge decided to do this, Mo.
Yeah, Jonathan, of course, this case is gaining national attention, and what legal expert I spoke with says the judge likely put the order in place to stop any publicity from influencing the outcome from when Gilley goes to trial. Just weeks before Lee Gilley was set to go on trial, a Harris County judge is now stepping in. According to court records, a gag order has been issued. Gilley has been accused of strangling his pregnant wife in 2024. We spoke with a criminal defense attorney who says the judge's order is largely due to the high profile of this case.
In this particular case, there's so much of it, and people are hearing about it and people are talking about it, that it's increasing the risk that you're going to have more people that are not only going to hear something about it, but they're going to remember something about it.
This past week, the case gaining even more attention after prosecutors say Gilley cut off his ankle monitor at his Houston home and flew from Canada to Italy, where he's now in jail. According to the Italian courts, he used a fake Belgian passport to get there. On Thursday, ABC 13 spoke with Gilley's attorney, Dick DeGuerin, who said his client's fleeing to Italy could jeopardize his defense.
It's a factor that can be, or a fact that can be used in his prosecution. When you flee, it's can be taken as consciousness of guilt. I'm concerned about that.
Then on Friday, the gag order was issued, and that limits what both prosecutors and defense attorneys involved can say to the press or public.
A jury needs to be able to make a decision based on the evidence in that trial and not anything that they hear in the media or anything that they hear from the lawyers.
Gilley's defense team says he has hired an attorney in Italy where he's seeking political asylum. They say they don't know when he'll return to the U.S. Mo Hyder, ABC 13, Eyewitness News.
Dick DeGuerin, for those who do not know, represented, I believe, David Koresh in the Waco case, the Branch Davidians, Robert Durst murder trial, Houston Attorney General Ken Paxton. So he's a very, very high-profile attorney. I mean, 2 interesting things here. Let's go to Melba first, then Melissa. But Melba, to you, there is now a gag order in place. Steve Cohen did a great job. We were going to have DeGuerin on the show today. It looks like he's concerned now, and that leads into my next question, because they just unsealed some court documents where a couple of attorneys want out of the case and need permission from the judge. But let's start with the gag order, Melba. When does a judge, institute a gag order? Obviously, in this case, the judge has.
Yeah, usually it's in a high-profile case where that intense public interest and scrutiny could impact whether or not, like the defense counsel had said, whether or not you can get a fair trial. Because remember, the jury pool is from the community. And so if the community is here every single night on the news, hearing about it, they're obviously going to form their own opinions as to the defendant's guilt or innocence before they even get to the courtroom. And so you can't unring a bell that's already been rung. Once you get to the courtroom and you're like, no, pay attention to the evidence that comes out here that you're sitting here listening to today. They're like, yeah, sure, I can do that. But in the back of my head, I do remember that one Dateline where they talked about XYZ ABC, and I just know for sure he's guilty, right? Or I just know for sure this is a frame up and he's innocent. So I think the judge implemented a gag order at the right time. And I think also strategically, you would want that gag order in terms of what's happening with Italian politics. Because again, this case is still winding its way through the Italian court system, and they're making a decision as to whether or not to send him back. And if there is a ton of pretrial press, and now the defendant in Italy can say, listen, look at the way they're vilifying me. There's no way. They're going to kill me as soon as I get there. Please, you have to save my life. Now you've given Italian authorities more to work with in terms of, preventing or thwarting any attempt at extradition. So,
and what, Melba, what about like diplomatic, attempts kind of behind the scenes with, the ambassador to Italy, things of this nature? Do they get involved on diplomatic levels in a case like this?
They absolutely can. They absolutely can. Now, again, usually it's very straightforward of basically prosecutor's office to prosecutor's office, and then figuring out whichever law enforcement agencies need to be in charge of the extradition. So is it, detectives from Texas, they're going to fly over to Italy, grab him, get on a flight and come back with him? Who do they need to coordinate on the Italian side in terms of who do we talk to, where he's being held, that sort of thing? But if things get even more hectic in terms of the machinations of the Italian court system, and, much like, Melissa said, in terms of that 1980s case, that's still good law in Italy, that's where the ambassadors can kind of come in and try to put a little bit of, I wouldn't say pressure, but persuasion in terms of, hey, listen, I know you guys aren't a big fan of assurances, but what would make you feel comfortable in order for us to get this person extradited, right? So those high level discussions might include some ambassadors. Yes. Interesting.
Gia and TJ's mom here, to Dr. Hamilton, and I want to get to this other issue. There's a lot of things to cover here. Dr. Hamilton, how long can Italy hold him in jail? He didn't commit a crime in Italy. I mean, it's a great question. I mean, is there a chance that if they don't want to extradite him, this guy can just create a brand new life and tour in Italy and go to the Olympics 30 years from now when it returns there?
Well, allegedly, he has committed a crime in Italy, which is he entered the country on a fake passport.
Okay.
Now, for them, the penalty, they would call it serious, but serious for Europe in terms of punishment is very different than in the U.S. So a serious punishment for them is perhaps 6 months to a couple years, depending on the facts. So they can continue to hold them on that particular crime. Also, he has no right to stay there, so they would have to grant him some legal right to stay, and it could be based on his attempt at asylum status. So they would have to work through that, but at the moment, he has no right to be released on that. And then to circle back to Melba's point, one of the things that is also sensitive in Europe, much more than the U.S., is the allegation he's made of what he has called media persecution. So most European countries, as well as some other westernized countries such as Australia, New Zealand, and Canada, the gag order we're talking about is generally applicable in criminal cases. They think that in the U.S., where the media has access to all sorts of information before and during trial, is not normative to them. Now, I don't think in context, although we're at the beginning of the case here, that will trigger Italy's decision on whether to extradite on or not, but they are very sensitive to that. So it could be, as Melba mentioned, something that does play a role. I don't think it's going to be dispositive, but it could be relevant to their decision about how heinous they might think it is to extradite him back to the U.S., both for the death penalty and the so-called media circus about it.
Yeah, you see Bice here saying, oh boy, here we go with the media garbage that they're going to try to use. But 8 Feathers of Hope, becoming a YouTube member. Thank you. Melba, to you. So the latest, the absolute news developments, and I want to go back to the timeline, which we'll do with Dr. Hamilton, a former law enforcement officer, but newly sealed court filings, which I guess were unsealed, are revealing some turmoil apparently within the defense team circles. And when we just saw that news story, you saw Dick DeGuerin saying, I have issues now because now fleeing brings up consciousness of guilt. This is going to be harder for me to defend. But at least 2 attorneys, and they don't say who, on this Dick DeGuerin team have filed sealed motions reportedly saying we want out. They're trying to basically withdraw. What's going on here? And I guess my question is, if you don't want to represent someone, how hard is it to get out of representing them, especially if you're a private defense attorney?
Yeah, so I can understand why these defensive attorneys want to cut and run, because they're like, there's nothing worse than a client who doesn't listen. And so it's like, you're paying the attorney for their advice. Let the attorney be the attorney. This is where I go off on my side rant. No, don't go on Chat GPT or Claude thinking, oh yes, this is what I want my attorney to do, because they don't, an AI does not practice law, right? So, but that goes to the whole thought of people who think that they can handle their case better than people who actually went to law school and tried cases. So I'm sure at some point in time, his attorneys told him, hey, stick around. Don't flee. Here's some of the things that, you would want to do to kind of keep a low profile, stay out of the media, let folks forget about you. So then that way we can make whatever motions we want to make, or, kind of rehab your image in advance and kind of come back to that sweet, kind husband image, right? Like you got to be able to give the defense team time to do that kind of rehab. And now he just blew that all out of the water by cutting off his ankle monitor and fleeing. And so, like the attorney said, that is textbook consciousness of guilt. So literally all the prosecutor has to get up and say, and I mean, that's going to be the easiest homicide to prosecute. Okay, here's all the evidence we had. And oh, by the way, he got up, got a fake passport, fled via Canada to Italy. And, we had to spend taxpayer dollars to bring him back in order for him to stand trial. Have at it, right? So, this is probably the worst case scenario for the defense team. And in recognition of that, they're like, listen, we want out. We want to be able to dedicate our time to someone who's actually going to listen to us, and maybe we have a shot at winning. And to your question, it's not that difficult to get out of a case. Usually you just have to give some grounds in terms of, number one, you didn't get paid, right? So if your bill didn't get paid, a judge can't force you as a private attorney to represent someone, right? So you've got that. Or if there's just a material disagreement with the strategy that you cannot come to terms. You can't, if a judge forces an attorney to represent someone, now you run into that situation of what we call ineffective assistance of counsel, which is something that you can use on appeal. So if the prosecution is able to get a conviction, then on appeal, when the defendant, goes to a higher court and says, hey, the trial court screwed up and, they forced my attorney to represent me, and he basically didn't, or they basically didn't do anything that I asked them to do. It was all awful. Well, guess what? That conviction could then be overturned. So you don't want to set up that situation, which is why judges give, pretty decent latitude to defense counsel who want to withdraw from cases.
Yeah. I mean, Dr. Hamilton, is it odd? I mean, you used to live in Texas, but and I don't know if the law has changed at all, but I was surprised that this guy got out accused in the murder of his wife and unborn baby, and then he's let out of jail on $1 million bond. I thought that would be kind of like a no bond situation. Are you surprised that he was able to bond out? And you see here DeGuerin, the famous criminal defense attorney out of Texas, telling him not to fight the extradition, which he appears to be doing, which I'm sure is irritating Dick DeGuerin, who's also, I'm told, 85 years old and probably has no patience for this anymore. But just back to my original question now, Dr. Hamilton, which I've already forgotten.
It was in a capital murder case.
Yeah.
The likelihood that people are bonded out, and it is does not happen very often. So it is a large bond amount, $1 million, but this apparently was somebody who could afford it. But even giving any bond amount for a capital murder case is really odd. And I think what Dick DeGuerin is reacting to is it looks bad for defense counsel when their client flees. Because basically, even though they don't guarantee to a court, they basically are standing up saying, trust us, judge, the client will do everything we say. I've got control of it, and he'll be fine. And this is a big bond. And so when a client then flees in such a case, it looks bad for defense counsel, because later on, then the judge is going to look at them, and be more critical of those kinds of assurances. And so more of their clients are going to remain in prison, because this is an example that now other prosecutors can point to of, look, judge, even $1 million bond and assurances didn't keep this person in this country. And even taking his passport did not assure his continued existence in the country either.
By the way, on the way in, which is a long time ago already, please hit that like and subscribe button. We've got a Patreon page that Carm is going to become a bigger part of, and she doesn't know it, but she will soon. So we've got a Patreon link as well. This is essentially, thank you to Gia and TJ's mom. I had the pleasure of meeting when my mom and I just spoke at my high school to 600 and something students, which was great. She gifted 5 memberships. Thank you to Gia and TJ's mom for that. I don't have the court hearing per se, and we're going to watch another story in a second. But Melba, I can tell you what Lee Gilley said in court. He said, "The only crime I committed was fleeing." This is in the Italian court. "I am innocent. I did not kill my wife. My wife is dead, and they wrongly blame me. I fled to avoid being killed and to escape the relentless media persecution." First of all, it's not a death penalty case right now. So he's assuming that's what he was going to get to avoid being killed. They say that he did kill her, and we'll go through this. He claims she OD'd. There was signs of strangulation and murder. And then he says he fled to escape the relentless media persecution. This is really going to damage him, obviously, going down the road. If he does come back and he's extradited back, how much of this can eventually be used in a trial if it goes to trial?
All of it. All of it. Because again, and that's why the defense attorneys are like cutting and running, because there's all these public statements now that are coming in. He's like, "Oh no, I didn't do it. I just fled because I was wrongfully charged. The only crime I committed, meaning that's an admission because you're saying you committed a crime, is fleeing." So you're acknowledging that you ignored what the court expressly told you, right? Because the judge will tell you when you're released on bond, okay, we're taking your passport, do not leave the jurisdiction. They make it very clear, right? So there's no misunderstanding. And I'm sure his counsel said something similar. So by him leaving and already showing that he can't obey court orders, what makes you think that he could obey other laws if he can't obey the most simple one, which is stay behind home, right? So I'm not really seeing.
By the way, forget a podcast. Melba needs her own show. Like, Melba, you need a reality show on TV. Screw the podcast thing.
I vote for that.
Find me on YouTube and Substack. I do a little bit of this as well. So
I gotta get. I know some people.
Okay, let's do it.
Let's do it. All right, here's another news story. Let's watch this for some different details, and then I want to go back to the timeline because this guy, someone said he's a real piece of work. Well, you'll see what he was up to, including looking for college-age girls. But here we go. Oh, this is from the Instagram here. This is her social media. All right, that's my bad, but that is there is an Instagram page, and I'm sure Facebook, but on Instagram it's Justice for Krista. They do need support financially to help them. I reached out to them. I did not hear back, but I will try to get, with Steve Cohen's help, try to get the family on the show. They're very upset that their daughter, sister, etc., family member might not get justice because this guy was able to escape the law, at least for the time being. Now, Dr. Hamilton, he did tell the court also, on top of crying about the media, he said, "I took off to Italy because of the lifestyle, the culture, international protection, and hopes for a fair trial. But it did stun people that he said lifestyle and culture. Like, it's almost like this guy thinks he's going out to the cafes in Italy. What do you imagine his life is going to be like in Italy right now? Because he seems a bit, as the kids say, delulu, otherwise known as delusional.
Well, for the moment, he is in custody and likely to remain there for a while. His life is not going to be the picture perfect as he is representing it, in terms of, it kind of gave me the impression that he thinks he's going to be laying on a beach in Italy for the rest of his life. But by the way, has anybody yet, in terms of the fleeing and consciousness of guilt, mentioned Donna Adelson?
Yeah.
Hello.
Vietnam. Yeah. That's a whole other
we
story.
saw how well that played out. But unlikely. But I also wanted to mention, in terms of the case, the Venezia case in the 1986 or so that I mentioned earlier, is he, even though they did not extradite him, he did not go free. So what was interesting there, and I don't quite know how jurisdictionally they did it, basically their concept though was choose extradition or prosecution. And so what the Italian authorities did was to prosecute him on that murder charge, despite the murder occurring in Florida, and they got a conviction in Italy, and he was sentenced to 22 years, I believe. So that is not a get out of jail free card. So in terms of, if they deny extradition, is they could potentially prosecute him in Italy. Again, I don't know jurisdictionally how they did that, but they were able to manage it.
Melba, thank you. Melba, to you. And someone mentioned Amanda Knox. Let's just stop. I mean, is there anything to compare Amanda Knox to this case with Melba? Not really.
Yeah, I mean, that to me was, if I'm remembering correctly, she was like a study abroad, and so she was already there, and the homicide occurred.
It all occurred there, right?
Yeah, it's not like this was something she did in the U.S. and then she fled to a study abroad program or something like that. So.
Right.
But again, in terms of paralleling the Italian justice system, and that there was a tremendous amount of media attention and frenzy around Amanda Knox from U.S. media as well as European media. So if his whole thing was, I came here to escape the persecution of the media, bruh, you were better off trying to go to Mars, because literally everybody's going to be interested. They're going to be reporting on it. They're going to be live streaming. So in terms of the media circus, I could see something similar happening. But in terms of like how everything will go procedurally, there's going to be some differences because the crime did not occur in Italy. But I'm very interested to see if Italian authorities do prosecute him for the murder of his wife in the United States, if they prosecute him in a court in Italy. I'd be very curious to see.
What do you put the chances of that actually happening, where they prosecute him?
I mean, also thinking about the greater geopolitical tensions as well, right? Because not going to go down the rabbit hole of politics, but just saying, there has been in recent history a war of words between their prime minister and our president. So who knows if they might feel some type of way and be like, you know what, we're not cooperating with you guys because we don't feel you've been respectful enough to us. So we trust our judicial system. We will handle it. So I think some of that may play into it as well. But also, again, if they're like, do we really want to use our resources to be wilder with this? Or we could just put them, on a plane back to the U.S. and let them deal with it. I mean, I think it could cut either way.
Yeah, I mean, Dr. Hamilton, let me have you weigh in on that as well. What are the chances Italian authorities say, you know what, we don't necessarily trust the state of Texas. They might put him to death, so we will prosecute him here in our great country. We have a person in the chat named Life in Tuscany, who I assume is living in Italy right now, and says that they will prosecute him there for murder. Do you think that's going to happen?
It is possible.
Here we go. Look at that. I'm sorry, Dr. Hamilton. Life in Tuscany. Joel, femicide here is a big deal. They will prosecute pending what our governor sends over. So what do you think, Dr. Hamilton?
Well, there's not a incentive for them to let this person go free on such a heinous charge, because it's not only the murder of his wife, but also unborn child as well. And it would just simply, Melba's also correct, again, in terms of geopolitically, is allowing this kind of person to get off on such a charge is not going to sit well with anybody, really. And by the way, my understanding is there is a West Wing episode that is very similar, which is a young kid was charged with a heinous offense, could be murder, and his parents got him to Italy. And so kind of basically the plot there was politically there were machinations between the two countries about how to extradite the one back. Apparently they didn't read about the case I mentioned or took dramatic license, but in case anybody was interested in a dramatic version of similar events, you can revisit West Wing, I understand.
Oh, wow.
But I certainly hope that this person does not go free simply because of this. But again, Italy is a first world country. This is a heinous crime. You had mentioned that one of the things he mentioned was I'm innocent and such. I don't imagine that Italy is going to delve into the facts of whether there's innocence or not, because that does not seem to be a case where that is going to play very well. And there's not really an incentive on their part to parse the evidence or not. Again, it is quite relevant, as your viewer said, that it is femicide, and violence against women is now taken very seriously in Europe.
By the way, when I was telling you about my life story earlier about this being Thursday with 97 things going on, one of the things I would like to do is do a few more 2 p.m. shows during the week, because we are a global phenomenon after all, and a lot of people across the pond and elsewhere can't watch us live. So every once in a while, more often, I'll be doing 2 p.m. shows. Melba, let's go completely off the law track and put your psychologist hat on. And all of a sudden, I'm hearing myself. I have no idea. That might be the COE. Why do these men who'd rather chase multiple women and stay uncommitted even bother getting married and having kids in the first place?
Now that is $1 million question. Oh, I'm echoing as well.
Yeah, I don't know what is going on here. Hold on, everybody. Hello? That took it away. I think it's Melissa,
Okay.
but Melissa, I'll unmute you. Go ahead, Melba.
Okay, so that is the $1 million question right there, because I have asked that question 1 million times, literally. But what I think there's a few things at play. Number one, depending what career you're in or what social circle you move in, it becomes almost distasteful after a certain age for you not to be married. Right. So you want to, the example I always give is you're at a law firm and you want to make partner, right? So you want to show that I'm married, I have a stable home. Look, I have kids, so you show up to the cocktail parties with your wife on your arm and the whole thing, because you're doing it for optics, not because you actually love the person and this is the life you want. You see the family as the ticket to getting the life you want, which is to have means, to be a self-styled playboy or whatever the case may be. I've always said, listen, I don't understand why somehow in the last, bit, divorce is no longer an option, right? Like, you got to kill people versus get divorced. Like, there's no shame in it. It's fine. Sometimes marriages don't work out. Why do you got to pick the most, the most horrendous option when literally y'all can just split up? Maybe don't even necessarily get divorced, just separate. So then you don't have to worry about the separation of assets or whatever the case may be, right? Like, I just don't really understand that. But to me, I think it's optics. And then lastly, I think it might be just narcissism in terms of, I want my cake and eat it too. Somehow I feel entitled to having a wife and kids and then having 3 side pieces, right? Like, because somehow it makes them feel better as a man, or shows that, hey, I'm so wealthy that I can, take care of, one whole family and then spoil my mistresses with jewelry and trips and all of that. But regardless, it's sick no matter how you cut it.
For sure. Narcissistic psychopath or sociopaths. Imagine that, saying that. Imagine that. And then look at this. I don't know if this is true, but I'm assuming it is. We've got the best community in the world. For femicide in Europe, you get 12 to 17 years in prison. That's unbelievable that it's that low. Just back to Melba here, because I want to get into some of the law enforcement stuff with Melissa in a second. But the prosecutor's position here is they are coming out publicly and saying, look, this flight to Italy is evidence of consciousness of guilt right out. They're saying that he planned the escape. He discussed obtaining fake identities. He removed the GPS monitor. He intentionally fled before the trial. He used a name. This is the part that I was like, whoa, like, how did people figure this out? He used a fake Belgian passport with the name Lejeune Jean-Luc Olivier. Melba, where the hell do you get a fake passport in Canada, a fake Belgian? I need to know this, actually, probably. Maybe, not for sinister purposes, but, just if I ever need to take off. Melba, where do you get these fake documents? And is this now becoming an airtight case almost for the prosecution?
Well, I mean, I honestly got the same question. I don't know where you get fake documents from.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm looking at, James Bond movies, Jason Bourne, and they seem to be able to have 15 fake passports. But again, when you think about how much our technology has advanced, including our home printers and everything like that, listen, all you got to do is take a selfie, print it out, So if you have somebody with decent technical means, it's not impossible to get something that would be passable. Now, I'm sure there's a whole underground dark net type thing going on where you pay in Bitcoin or something, probably.
Yeah.
But there's got to, again, I think there's a number of different pathways that one can get it. But yes, this is creating an airtight case for the prosecution. I mean, even if the case was slightly weaker before, and I'm not saying it was, again, based on his statements where, oh yeah, she's committed suicide. And meanwhile, her friends and everyone said that she wasn't suicidal. He himself said that she was not suicidal beforehand. And oh, by the way, she's got bruises and injuries consistent with strangulation, which you don't get if you commit suicide. So just from the basic autopsy medical examiner's report alone, it was a wrap, right? And then, of course, you get into his comments, him posting on Reddit, talking about, I want me a college-age girl, whoever else he was cheating with, bringing them on the stand. Already, I mean, that case was lock, stock, and barrel, ready to go. But now you put on top of it that he fled and cut off his monitor. Well, by the way, cutting off his monitor is an additional charge because it's an escape charge. So now he's got murder to worry about, plus escape, which will give him depending, maybe another 10 years. So you might get life plus 10 years. He's not getting out. It is what it is. But yeah, this now is a dream case for the prosecution, but for the aspect of the fight to get him back, which of course, weighs very heavily on the victim's family in terms of, man, we got to wait all this time for justice. And on top of that, we have to wait for Italian authorities to do what they're going to do. So I know that has to be so horribly upsetting and stressful for the family.
I'm with Mr. Crowley. I want to get to this comment, so I'm leaving Mr. Crowley in the chat. But he says, or for Mr. Crowley, I don't know if it's a man or woman, how does anyone have energy for a wife and kids plus at least one mistress? I have no idea.
Because they're not taking care of their wife and kids.
Yeah.
They're not actually chipping in.
All I want is a man cave to hide in. That's all I want. Maybe one more pug named Mike Tyson. That's it. Maybe one more. Venus Gal here. As far as this fake Belgian passport, Dr. Hamilton, he may have gotten it before he fled to Canada, researched through someone or on some device, which leads me to another question, Dr. Hamilton. Let's say, I don't even know if this guy has a brother, but let's say he had a family member, because I'm sure there were monitoring devices, right? So let's say he has someone give him something to search this with. Is that person now an accessory, to murder after the fact or after the crime? Are those people, if we find out that he had help getting out of here, are those people subject to criminal prosecution?
No, I don't imagine that would be connected to an accessory after the fact. It's way too disconnected. But I do, I have thought about it when I first heard about the facts, is that there are other people involved. I don't think he created this fake passport on his own. So there are other people will fall as well. It could be that maybe it uncovers a fake passport ring, and so maybe they're able to get a larger type of gang. I do want to say, though, that even though we kind of gave him kudos for getting a false passport, it wasn't a very good one because apparently Italian authorities noticed it relatively quickly as soon as he got there. So, but it does raise an issue that one of your viewers mentioned, which is it could be that he had it in the U.S. and used it to get into Canada. And hopefully, I don't know anymore whether you need a passport to get into Canada per se from the U.S., but maybe they missed it, which is not necessarily good. The other thing as well is that the airline, I believe this was Air Canada, can be fined pretty heavily for allowing somebody to get on their plane with a fake passport. But Italian authorities did really well on catching it very quickly. In terms of his asylum claim, one thing that will work against him is that he didn't immediately notify them when he landed that he was trying to claim asylum. It looks like, again, this is based on the facts that are being reported so far, is he tried to get away with it, and only after they detained him on it did they admit to it. So that's going to undercut a little bit, not fully, his asylum claim. So that, in other words, Italy is not going to appreciate that it appeared that he was going to attempt to get in with that false passport and not claim asylum as quickly as they would have expected.
Great point, Melba. Just to jump on that, Dr. Hamilton, I'm going to keep you muted because we're getting a weird echo. But Melba, I mean, that's a great point. He uses this fake Belgian passport, and it was only after Italian officials realized it was, forfeiture that he then said and spilled the beans as to why he was there. He was going to try to make a run for it. Does that exacerbate the situation for him in Italy? In other words, if he didn't get caught with a passport, he might just be hanging out in Turin right now at a coffee shop.
And that's what he was banking on. I just did some quick research because I did see one of the viewers had asked whether or not he could go to prison for, the fake passport in Italy. And based on my quick research, it looks like the maximum sentence for entering Italy illegally is 8 years in prison. So, even if the whole murder thing doesn't shake out the way, there's still the issue of he could be faced with a prison sentence in Italy. And what could happen is maybe Italian authorities are like, you know what, you got to serve your sentence here. And then we're going to send you to the US. So you'll do, 5, 6, 7, 8 years here in Italy. And then guess what? Now you're back on a flight to deal with your homicide case in Texas. Clearly not the ideal, but there is a universe where that could potentially happen. Right. So.
And Dick DeGuerin will then be 93, and he'll still be working and making a lot of dough defending people. Dr. Hamilton, I don't know why we're getting this weird echo, but what is prison like in Italy as far as you know?
I don't know specifically about Italy, but I do know generally that prisons in most of continental Europe are less dangerous than in a lot of prisons in the U.S. and other countries. I don't know specifically about Italy. If though they were to entertain his asylum claim, they tend to let them, sometimes they release the individuals in the country. It may not be as likely here because he apparently has no contacts or a home in Italy. But if they do continue to incarcerate him or those that are seeking asylum, it tends to be in more of a residential kind of facility that is somewhat incapacitated, but not equivalent to the traditional prison environment that we're used to in the U.S.
Thank you, Dr. Hamilton. Dr. Hamilton's going to stick around. Hopefully this echo, I don't know what is going on here. It's our Fisher-Price equipment, which we will, we're in the you won't know anything, but behind the scenes, we're working to tie and tidy everything up here. Melba, you've got to run here real quick. I don't think anyone's going to be surprised to learn that this all starts in 2023 when this guy's caught having an affair. Then he's on Reddit asking for people helping to help him find a college age girl for a relationship with benefits, friendship with benefits. Your final thoughts on this case and this slimy guy who appears to be Lee Gilley?
Yeah, just gross. Now, of course, in all fairness, just because you're unfaithful, just because you're a cheating evil person does not mean you're a murderer. However, it does set the table for a motive, right? That you are over here living your best life, and now the wife and kids is, that's now an albatross around your neck, and the only way you can see fit out of it is to commit the most horrible crime you can commit, which is murder. So, I mean, to me, it just speaks to the character of this person. And again, I'm very curious to see what Italian officials are going to do and how they're going to handle it. But no matter how you cut it, he going to prison. The question is, what country is it going to be in?
There you go. Melba, you got to have your own show. We'll discuss. We got to get you back on. It's been way too long, but thank you for being here.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care. So then there were two. Dr. Hamilton is here. Dr. Hamilton, I'll unmute you just because of the echo, but let me go through this timeline. Someone was asking, I don't have it in a graphic form, I apologize, but 2023 broadly, prosecutors alleged that Lee Gilley was having an affair with a woman in San Diego. Then you hop ahead a year. Prosecutors say Gilley posts on Reddit claiming he's bored in his marriage and seeking a younger, quote unquote, friends with benefits relationship. Let's hold it right there. I mean, Dr. Hamilton, that's a lot of motive, as Melba said. Is it anything else?
Yes, sometimes, and I haven't heard anything yet about whether there was more domestic violence in this relationship prior to the murder, but sometimes pregnancies will trigger violence and trigger lethal violence. Now here, it's usually on the first baby, and this one I think is the third, but it still is possible. It's as if the pregnancy itself triggers some kind of anger. Again, don't know whether applied here. I'm just bringing up some statistics in terms of domestic abuse. And we also see a lot of times that men who feel entitled, as this person seems to be, is they think they do get married and have children because they want somebody to take care of them. They want somebody who will love them unconditionally as well as their children. But then they also want to have the fun of having additional girlfriends or boyfriends. And what's also interesting then is if the spouse also wants to play around, it's a one-way street. So it's as if I can do this, I can play around and cheat, but they get extremely angry if the other one does. And I'm not saying that happened here. I'm just giving some context to some of these domestic abuse perpetrators and their feeling of entitlement, and things just are not equal between them. So something might have, triggered it. Could be pregnancy, could be maybe she found out about the affair because it looks like he was doing a lot of communication. So maybe she, again, speculating on that. But unfortunately, this scenario does not surprise me in terms of domestic abuse.
Here's some personal information from Bisky that she shared in the chat. And I'm bringing this up, Dr. Hamilton, just to underscore what we were talking about. From Bisky speaking to Mr. Crowley, my divorce in 2007 cost me $80,000, and I was a home mom. My daughter's trying, and she didn't have access to money, so she can't divorce her husband, and he won't want it. She's forced to stay. It is amazing how expensive this is and how difficult it is becoming for men and women to get out of their marriages. I mean, how problematic is this, Dr. Hamilton, in your view?
Well, we see this in Corey Richins, which, as you said, you're going to talk about because she just got sentenced. It was going to be, she wasn't going to get anything in a divorce because they had a prenup. So for her, it was, and she was allegedly very motivated by money. And so she didn't want to lose the money in a divorce. She also had a boyfriend, not alleged because that came out in trial. And so sometimes the people just decide that divorce is not an option for them. Murder is the option. And that's what they pursue, and they justify it to themselves. And so they will keep fighting, and they justify in their head and to everybody else, this is what I needed to do. I deserve this. And the death was more appropriate than my losing money in a divorce.
Yeah, I just want to say also to Krista Gilley, to her whole family, that we're thinking of you. There is, I believe, a GoFundMe, Justice for Krista on Instagram, and I'll get the COE to put it in the show summary. And obviously, to Krista's family and friends. You have an open platform here. I try to make it available to victims, and what's going on now has got to be maddening. So if you all need, and I did reach out with a private message, a direct message on Instagram, but if you all need help, please let me know. We'll get you on the platform. This is Krista, obviously in better days. This is not the pregnancy. She was most recently pregnant when she was allegedly murdered. She, I believe, was just 9 weeks at that point. But Dr. Hamilton, let me go through this timeline. If you have questions, now is the time. Put in a triple Q. Dr. Hamilton is retired corrections officer, retired law enforcement police officer, and a law professor. You got 3 in 1 here. So if you have questions, now for sure is the time. But okay, so 2023, he's having an affair, according to prosecutors in San Diego. 2024, he's on Reddit looking for a woman with benefits. 2024, October 7th of 2024, this is when things really go south. So October 7th, 2024, Lee Gilley allegedly purchases a new SUV without Krista's knowledge, and that sparks an argument. So the guy comes home and literally says, yeah, I just bought a brand new car, and he's in a marriage and decides it'd be a good idea not to share that little bit of information with his wife. That night, that very night after this fight, Lee Gilley, this guy that you're looking at, calls 911 claiming his wife overdosed or took her own life, either accidentally overdosed or took her own life. She is found unresponsive inside the family's Houston Heights home. The couple's 2 young children reportedly inside the home when this happened, which when you translate it means he murdered her, allegedly murdered her, with his kids there. Same way Corey Richins did this with her children there. And that came up during the sentencing phase and in the trial. But the next day, Krista Gilley dies. She's 38 years old, 9 weeks pregnant, the mother of 2 children. And then Dr. Hamilton, this is the important part. He says she OD'd. The medical examiner says not exactly. The medical examiner rules Krista's death a homicide. The cause of death, compression of the neck and back. Hospital personnel reportedly also observed bruising and facial trauma. He's then arrested with capital murder in the deaths of Krista and the unborn child. What do you make of the timeline? What do you make of his story that she accidentally ODs? So he doesn't think that people are going to see the bruising, and then Emmy's not going to figure out that she basically had her neck choked. Let me unmute you here. There you go.
Yeah, so an interesting claim on his part, because I imagine that all her family and friends are going to say she was not suicidal. She was probably excited about the new baby and would not, even if she would harm herself, probably, very unlikely to harm the baby. And what's also interesting is that DeGuerin was going to have a different defense. He was going to point to some rare blood disorder, I understand, that she had been diagnosed with not too long beforehand. So you've now got 3 different theories, but certainly the defense counsel, if that is true, that would be contradicting what Mr. Gilley said. Also want to bring up the idea of lots of evidence pointing to Mr. Gilley feeling entitled. So when he left, his bail was revoked, the $1 million. I read at least one report that some of that bond money came from family members. So he's basically throwing them under the bus in terms of them losing their money. And he's now abandoning those children. So he intentionally is wanting to stay in Italy permanently away from those children. So this is a person who decided that he's worth more than his children, his live children, as well as the dead one, is at least allegedly on the latter part.
Okay, I clipped you there. That is what you call, ladies and gentlemen, an awful human being. He's not been convicted in a court of law, but you're looking at a real bad person right here on the screen. What job did he have? I believe, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, that he was some sort of software person, software executive, like on the sales side. Obviously, he had some financial means. Let me just go back to the timeline. So he's arrested October 11th, I believe. Let me double check that. Somewhere around October 11th, he's arrested and charged with capital murder. That is October 11th. 6 days later, he's released on the $1 million bond. That's October of 2024, Dr. Hamilton, and we're now into May of 2026. This seems like this was being planned for a very long time. He was under this ankle monitor for, the better part, I think, of 2 years. So how much planning do you think went into this?
A good amount of planning, at least in terms of, as he admitted, he has investigated Italy in terms of choosing that as a country that is very against the death penalty. I do think he might have then found the case I mentioned earlier, which is that Italy, unlike its other European counterparts, will not take the assurances of another jurisdiction of not pursuing the death penalty in terms of not agreeing to extradition in any case. It also could be a thumbs up. What do I want to say to his deceased wife, who apparently loved Italy. And so some of her family members have said that's another tragic thing he did, is to disrespect her wishes by going to a country that she loved when he's charged with her murder. But also, I think one of the triggers may have been, again, speculating, but his trial was coming up. So even though it's been a couple of years since he was arrested, he may have been getting more and more nervous as the trial looms. And that's typical for defendants, particularly capital defendants, is as your trial is coming up, things are getting more and more real. Your ability to control things and put it off is, you're losing control. One of the things we know about domestic abusers, again, don't know whether he was outside the context of what's being alleged in the murder charge, is they don't want to lose control generally, not only with their spouse, but it's just in their life. And so he might have been, he was facing a loss of the ability to control all around him, and facing. I think another trigger as well is he had been released, so he was not still in prison, and so the threat of being incarcerated again, much less the death penalty, may have been weighing on him. And so it looked like he was, at least what the allegations are, is he was actually communicating with the girlfriend about ways to get passports and ways to flee the country for a little while as well. And so this was then things came together in terms of his fleeing. I also read a report about his convincing a judge to allow him to travel to South Carolina for a sick mother, but not many reports are saying the same thing. So I'm not quite sure about the veracity of that and whether that played a role in his escape either. But it does show that he was willing to potentially play with the facts to be able to gain his freedom and move around more than he probably should have been able to.
And I read that same account that he had some sort of permission to go see. I don't know if she was terminally ill, but his mother was ill. I just want to read the family attorney for the Bowers. It's Krista Bauer. Gilley is her married name. The attorney for the family is a guy named Tim Ballingy, and he put out a statement. The Bowers are profoundly disappointed by the breakdown of the system. They were hoping to have the trial and to have him held accountable. I'm hoping that it still happens. I think it will happen. It's just a matter of time. And to that point, Dr. Hamilton, this came up earlier in the show, but just the question is being asked again. How long can extradition realistically be delayed here?
Indefinitely. I don't know that Italy has a specific statute that requires any particular time frame, because these are one-offs. There's not a lot of times that there are not a lot of extradition cases. So I don't know of any particular deadline. Other thing I wanted to mention as well is I don't believe Texas allows an entire trial in absentia. They would allow it if the trial started with the defendant present and then the defendant, after the trial began, voluntarily fled, they could continue the trial. But the fact that the trial has not yet begun, unfortunately, then I don't believe that Texas can legally, under its own statutes, then convict him in absentia. In absentia being, well, he's not present within the state.
I mean, this is a very interesting legal case for sure. From Elenator here, back to Dr. Hamilton. This also came up, but just to underscore it for us, Dr. Hamilton, if it's a capital murder in Texas, then why did he get out on bail? Do we know? I mean, I thought they were just held without bond.
I don't know that factually. Yeah, it's amazing. We generally don't see that for capital defendants being released, even if it is $1 million bond. And then for him is apparently he had the means to pay it because he did in fact do so. He also apparently had the means to hire Dick DeGuerin, who does not come cheap, and who I think occasionally does pro bono cases, but I imagine that this one is not one of those.
I would imagine you are correct. Life in Tuscany. It's amazing. You know, the guy does not do that. 100% does not do it for the money. He's got all the money he'll ever need, but he's 85. I'm sure he just loves to stay busy, and good for him. That's pretty cool. Life in Tuscany here. A few more questions, and then we'll get final thoughts from Dr. Hamilton, who is working through some of the technical glitches with us today. Tim was supposed to be here. Tim Jansen, he had a last minute. He is a full-time criminal defense attorney. He had a last-minute conflict. And, of course, Melba Pearson, the great Melba Pearson, FIU law professor, former homicide prosecutor. She was here for the first hour or so. But Life in Tuscany, to Dr. Hamilton, which jurisdiction is making the case for extradition? How does it all work with Interpol, feds, and Houston, Texas? By the way, this is the second high-profile case Texas let slip away. Caitlin Armstrong was the one, the bicyclist accused of murdering the boyfriend, I think's girlfriend. And I don't know if she went to Canada. I do remember watching video of her literally running away from a corrections officer. I don't remember all the details, but I do know what you're talking about. But to answer this question, with Interpol, the feds, Dr. Hamilton, take a shot at
it. Okay. Apologize for the feedback. But anyway, I believe what it is that the U.S. government requests the extradition of here, in this case, Italy. And what it happens in most cases that I'm familiar with, and I have worked on other extradition cases, is that actually Italy will be providing basically counsel on his behalf to fight the extradition, or at least represent him in the extradition. So it usually is country to country and not the state. Although here, obviously, it's the state who would be encouraging the federal government in the U.S. to be seeking the extradition. So Texas, it will be involved in terms of, because if they had said, we're not interested anymore, then it's unlikely that the federal government would pursue it. But it basically is going to be between the two countries. It will involve, so even though it is a legal case, in the background, there very likely is going to be political machinations of discussing how to do this in a way that is politically palatable and within the legal system. The other thing that is different in terms of this that we're not yet generally used to in the U.S. is the heavy role of the European human rights law. That we don't have a similar one in the U.S. other than generally constitutional law, but the difference there is that U.S. constitutional law is one country, whereas European human rights do apply to European countries, not necessarily England and Wales anymore for other reasons, but that the really strong emphasis on those human rights, which includes anti-death penalty. And so one of the things that's interesting for me as an American who's been in England now for about 9 years is their disdain for the U.S. criminal justice system on a couple aspects. The death penalty being one, the violence and sexual assault prevalence in U.S. prisons is another aspect sometimes that is brought up in extradition proceedings. And then the third aspect is sex offender civil commitment in the U.S., and that's basically our sexual predator statutes that may permit, that some states have, that permit the ongoing incarceration of individuals who have been determined to be sexual predators who can't control their impulses for mental disorder. But I just bring that up in terms of it might be surprising, at least to Americans, that there is this feeling in many other countries that some of our criminal justice products are barbaric in nature. And sometimes these extradition proceedings then bring that up in terms of just being appalled by the American legal system in some of those aspects.
HB Lab, she ran to Costa Rica. That's right. I guess that is what happened, and tried hiding at a yoga retreat as an instructor. That's one way to try to evade justice. Dr. Hamilton, this was their third child. She was 9 weeks pregnant. Why did he kill her? Has there been DV in this marriage? I mean, she was bruised apparently with facial bruising. If he didn't want a child, you know, I guess my question is, how big a problem is this? I mean, it's a problem, I'm sure, in the UK, but any idea the extent of domestic violence and intimate partner violence? I mean, there's something, I don't know what could be done about it, but it just seems like we have these cases all the time, Dr. Hamilton.
It is one of the leading causes of female death is femicide by an intimate partner or former intimate partner. And it usually doesn't go the other way, which is women generally don't kill their partners as well. So we do know it's a risk factor in domestic abuse situations, if there is one, that it rises to the level of lethality. And it happens far too often. And the other really scary thing is that your home ought to be the place that you feel most safe. And for many women, it's the home that is the danger when they're in terms of domestic abuse. It's the home where they face often violence, intimidation, coercive control, and sometimes lethality like this. And it's a shame, and it continues. So even all the efforts in the domestic abuse advocacy world that we make, it still continues in terms of male partners killing their female partners. Again, it is very gendered in that. The statistics indicate that. We still continue to try to fight it, but these cases still continue. So they still are in the news. They still occur despite our best efforts. And we still are going to keep trying. In some cases, for instance, in England and Wales, when there is a female who is murdered by their partner or former partner, is they will often then get a multidisciplinary review of the case and try to dig down and figure out what went awry, what were the factors that are related to it, and what as a system can we do better to try to prevent this. It's something that we don't see a lot in the US in terms of these reviews, but something that might be considered because it keeps happening again and again.
Very well said. Something's got to be done about it. Special shout out to Mims Benjamin today. She became a lifetime, I didn't even know that was an option, a lifetime Patreon member, and wrote us a beautiful note, which I need to respond to, which I will. It's hard for me to explain how great this community is. The messages I get, notes we get constantly. I've said this before many times. When I worked in news, this summer would be 30 years, which is hard for me to even fathom. But probably got 10 emails the whole time, and 9 of them were "I hate your tie," and the 10th was, you've got a stain on your shirt. And now we get dozens of messages every day across all our platforms. We are on Instagram at Surviving the Survivor, Twitter at Podcast STS. Someone hacked our Facebook account, and they have me as an AI person running around saying stupid things. Welcome to AI. By the way, if you haven't watched the AI doc on Amazon Prime, it is literally called the AI doc. Watch it. It'll either make you really scared or really encouraged, but it is not. It's going to do one or the other. What is Patreon? The COE can explain this. Patreon is a separate page to support shows. I don't know how else to say it. It's to support content creators separate from YouTube. You can just go to Patreon and search Surviving the Survivor, and you will find it. And the COE really handles most of that. But shout out again to Mims Benjamin. Again, thank you to Melba Pearson, a former homicide prosecutor who was on the show. Tim Jansen was supposed to be here. He'll be back before you know it. By the way, Carm, as I said, has a friend in town, so the show tomorrow will likely start at 1:30, not 1 p.m., and I will try not to argue with her tomorrow. We will try to have a civilized show for once. And Dr. Melissa Hamilton, she came on. We had some technical issues. We made it through. She is a professor of law at Surrey in the UK, retired law enforcement officer, retired corrections officer. And Dr. Hamilton, you get the final word. How do you think this all ends?
Well, this is overall a collision course between the death penalty, liked by the U.S., and European human rights, who does not agree with that. Boy, how it ends. I don't think that Mr. Gilley is going to be, laying on the beach, an Italian beach, for the rest of his life like he is envisioning. He is going to do some serious prison time. And I hope that there's some accountability, although, again, he's just been accused of this. He has not been convicted of a crime in terms of the murder. He has seemingly, though, admitted to a crime in terms of the entering with a false passport. So at least there is some criminality there. But it'll be something that's very interesting to watch. I do think as well that it's going to have a consequence in terms of fewer defendants who are charged with serious cases being given bonds, because again, prosecutors are going to be able to point to a legitimate example of somebody fleeing. And then going back to Donna Adelson, maybe two we have that have been highlighted on your shows, of the risk of, if you don't have them incarcerated pre-trial and they're being charged with murder, they may well be incented to flee to jurisdictions where they think that there's not extradition.
Big thanks to Dr. Hamilton. I hate to end on this note, but I just want to say, because it's on my mind, I got news last night that a photographer, a friend of ours, the COE and I met in Tucson, and a photographer, a video photographer for news, who was a very good friend of mine then, and also the COE's, passed away at a very young age. He was battling some demons and couldn't get a handle on it. And I've seen a lot of posts today on social media saying, I wish I talked to him. I wish I took it more seriously. Ultimately, he's a grown man in his mid-40s now. When I knew him, he was much younger. What a great guy. I mean, just an amazing human being, all the potential in the world. And I think he felt all alone in this world. And didn't know what to do, and just relied on those demons, and ultimately they took his life. So if you know someone out there struggling, try to talk to him, try to get him help. We all wish that we did more, and I'm just hoping, God knows what happens, but I'm hoping he's in a better place. And way too young, handsome guy, sweet guy, smart guy, an amazing photographer. And his parents are left behind and are also devastated they couldn't get him to help. So if you know someone struggling, do what you can to help. And if not, just give someone a smile today. Try to be nice, which I'm not great at myself, but just try to be nice. It could change a person's day. It could change the way they're thinking about themselves. Love you, America. See you tomorrow, 1:30.